This program is brought to you by the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC.
Of what we see as governors from the Niger Delta, that there was the need to carry out a forensic audit of the activities of the Niger Delta Development Commission, so that from the results that we get from that audit, it will be possible to streamline the activities of the NDDC with a view to putting it on course.
As the governor of Niger Delta, we met Mr. President. We told Mr. President there must be a surgical operation. We are in support of it.
It's unnecessary. I have said whether you call it forensic audit or any other, they are quite unnecessary. Because in the law setting it up, there is already a mechanism to check all that. If there is a fraud, the evidence of it is everywhere. You don't need a magnifying glass to see what is happening.
If we adhere to what the law says, simply we won't have all these complications. We will go through appropriate processes to prove whoever is guilty of anything.
Good evening. For a while after the creation of the NDDC in the year 2000, there was relative peace in the Niger Delta. Youth restiveness came to its minimum level. But since October last year, when the forensic audit of the NDDC was muted, neither Niger Delta nor the NDDC has known peace. Many agitations were for the forensic audit. Others seem to think there are some interests that do not want the forensic audit.
Any system without transparency and accountability is almost a dead system. For me, it's a welcome idea. We need to know how much NDDC has gotten from inception. We need to know how much has been expended on contracts. We need to know how much of those contracts have been completed. We need to know those who have stolen our money and need to go to jail. We need to know all of that. So I think, if you ask me, I will even add my own by saying that the president needs to even carry out an extra forensic auditing of it while the first phase is going on. Another phase to supervise the first phase that is going on should be done, because we must be clear.
I was one of the people who went to National Assembly and followed to call for this forensic audit. And I have no apologies to anybody in Niger Delta. I don't care whose house is God. Because the place was running contrary to the concept we introduced ab initio, that made the federal government to accept to set up this Life-Saving Interventionist Agency for our people. Anybody trying to question the issue of the forensic audit, let the person come and tell me what he contributed for the years when we went for this struggle.
Those who are against have one reason or the other. Probably they have soiled their hands and they don't want the forensic audit to go on. So they start putting confusion so that by the time this thing lingers on and on, the federal government may say, oh please, let's do away with this IMC. But that is not the solution.
These funds ought to be spent judiciously. And so whoever had given funds, like the federal government is doing now, I'm in support of it. You have to come all out transparently to actually look into how these funds have been spent. What did they what were these funds allocated for? Is that what they did? How much of the funds were spent for what quantity of job? And so these are the things that they should look at transparently.
The forensic audit is a fine one, because when we see the physical development in the region like we used to see, You know, when you see NDDC, when they were doing NDDC mass transits, NDDC project, NDDC bridge, the things were physical, we're seeing. And now in recent time, we just hear about billions. We're not seeing those things. So now the president is worried. If you send somebody on errand to go and put a place right, and the place is not right, you ask questions. So the presidency is asking questions.
If I am in support of forensic audit, I should also be in support of any other investigation. I should. Because it will be wrong of me to support that others who were not there before should be audited. That the people who are here now should not be audited. People are not going to take me seriously. Investigation into an NDDC should be holistic. It should encompass everything that has gone on in NDDC. Because if I now say it is wrong for the National Assembly to exercise its oversight function, but the president is right in ordering a forensic investigation of NDDC. There are three different organs of government. The executive have powers to appoint, powers to fire, powers to investigate. The legislature has power, oversight function, oversight power over NDDC. The judiciary, when they are caught, those who stole their court will be taken to court. And the judiciary is going to adjudicate on it. And then, if they are found guilty, they will be sentenced. If they are not found guilty, they will be acquitted. So these are the issues. So it will be wrong of me to say, if there is, these are allegations. If the National Assembly, in the exercise of its oversight function, discover that these are frivolous accusations, then the board will be allowed to, the board will be given a clean bill of health. Say that you're okay.
I can assure you that just the beginning of the forensic audit alone has sent some contractors back to sites. There are contractors who are supposed to do supplies. Since 2014, they want to do the supplies now. The contractor is ready to come and do supplies, agricultural supplies that were supposed to have been done since 2014. But there are many other people who have eaten these monies who are not ready to make refunds, who are going to do everything to truncate these forensic audits.
Now, those fighting us, the reason they are fighting us is they are very surprised that the forensic audit is moving on and is unveiling things already. And they want everything to, they are doing everything to stop the forensic audit. They want to smear us enough to say that this forensic audit is not necessary.
In fact, when TBI Library was there, we had what we call the master plan of the NDDC. I can't see that coming up anymore. So I don't even know. I can say it because you have people who are not even well versed on the issues of Niger Delta. We have people who don't even have what it takes to manage the affairs of the Niger Delta in place. So you are taking square pegs in round holes. You're taking people who don't have concern with the development of Niger Delta into positions, but the only qualification they have is that they are in my political party.
Now, in the midst of all that controversy, there are those who think that the recent allegation from the National Assembly that the IMC has spent over 40 billion naira outside the statutory provisions is another way of slowing down the audit. And the IMC says categorically that that kind of money cannot be spent untraced.
What the IMC has spent from the 20th of February till date is very, very available and cannot be something that will be covered. Contractors have been paid. We have told you the number of contractors that have been paid. Are those stolen monies that they pay to contractors that I do not know? We can give you a list of all the contractors and we'll ask you to go and contact those contractors to find out if they were paid or not. We'll have put the amounts of money there, but we don't want anybody kidnapped. But that's the basic truth. We'll give you a list of all the contractors, a long list of contractors that have been paid. Please go and confirm. We are not covering anything. And how they arrive at their figures, I don't understand. The NDDC operates accounts only in the central bank. And it is highly regulated. Anybody who wants to check the accounts of the NDDC is free to do so, to find out how 200 billion naira can disappear, how 40 billion can disappear, how 25 billion can disappear.
Now, they are talking about 40 billion, that we have expended 40 billion or we have stolen 40 billion. How can that be possible? All the payments we have made on projects, I'm the executive director of projects. I took my time. We have to verify. We have to inspect them. I took my time. I went from state to state. Everything, I recorded it. And whenever it is satisfied that you have done work that merits payment, we will pay you. The truth is obvious. It's there. Everything every penny we have spent. When you spend money, it is on the remitter platform of the Central Bank of Nigeria. You can't go and take government money anyhow and say you have misappropriated 40 billion. You've misappropriated this. Who are you telling? Who is a fool? And surprisingly, some journalists will jump on the bandwagon of this criticism. For what?
Now, the whole situation has led to the key players in the IMC coming up with their own observations as to what they think has been militating against the development of the Niger Delta and against the correct expenditure of all the monies allocated so far.
The 2019 budget will expire without any single project being achieved, mostly because the budget came from the National Assembly very late. It was approved and we got a letter of approval on the 20th of March 2020, and but the real hard copy that was signed was only made available to us by the 10th of April. From 10th of April to 31st of May does not give us the leverage to advertise properly for contracts to be executed. So everything was done to scuttle this. And even the hard copy was only released when we started making complaints. I don't want to go into what has passed on between the commission and the two committees in the National Assembly, because those two committees have put the National Assembly in very bad light, whilst we know that majority of the people in the Senate and in the House of Reps had no knowledge of what these two committees were doing to them. All the faults lay in those two committees, which operate as one-man committees, because even members of those committees are not aware of all these efforts that are being done to rape the destiny of the Niger Delta people, to set the Niger Delta people backwards. I state categorically, without fear of anybody, that the 2019 budget was frustrated for personal reasons of some people in the National Assembly, and also the unwarranted probes that they have gone to bring up is to make mockery of the forensic audit.
Between 2016 and 2019, emergency contracts of over 2 trillion were awarded under the supervision of the chairman of both committees. And this is the list of the awardees, and this is how they were all distributed. In this list, the chairman Senate committee, on behalf of the Senate, and when we asked the Senate members, they didn't know. They said they don't know. He collected 1,000 of those jobs and said he was going to give it to the Senate. The records are there. What led to it? When a chairman of Senate became chairman in 2015, he called the bureaucracy and said, "Look, you need to include for me 15 million naira projects in this budget." The bureaucracy said, okay, that's fair enough. They went behind and worked it out. When they came back, the chairman said, look, I didn't say 15 billion. I said 150 billion. So the bureaucracy went back and they couldn't comply because there was no way they could do that. So the chairman now went back to the bureaucracy. Why don't you award this in emergency? Why are we going to go through due process? That was how the emergency procedures were breached. And the commission now has a commitment of over 3 trillion. How can this continue? If you look at what the two chairmen did in the National Assembly, all the regional projects of Mr. President, they were removed from the budget. And as we speak, the budget of 2020, go and ask them, where is it? By now, we should have had the budget. It's 2019 budget we are arguing about. In the middle of 2020. This is May, going to June. When are they going to give us our budget? Ask the chairman.
So now, in the midst of all the accusations and counter-accusations, it's only proper that elders of the Niger Delta will come to the fore to say what they really think is going on. And one of such elders is Chief Edwin Clark, one of the founders or forefathers of the founders of the NDDC. He came recently with a very thorough, comprehensive press statement. And we'll go through what he said now.
In a letter addressed to both the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Chief Clark said that going by the plethora of allegations leveled against the National Assembly members by the NDDC management, there is a need for an independent investigative panel to exhaustively look into the various allegations raised. According to him, if nothing is done, and urgently too, to investigate these grievous allegations leveled against these members, and by extension the National Assembly, I must say that it will erode the confidence people, especially Niger Deltans, have with the National Assembly. The allegations made against both chairmen are very weighty and they cannot be swept under the carpet. Their off and cuff statement of explanations are not enough. Chief Clark further noted that the happenings in NDDC since the dissolution of the Oils, Minerals Producing Areas Development Commission (OMPADEC) by the NDDC bill over 20 years ago, for which I was very much involved, have been of great concern to all in the region, having regard to the amount of money sunk into the commission by the federal government. The NDDC is an interventionist agency brought about to salvage the people of the Niger Delta region, but this purpose has been completely defeated, and that is why, as a leader and major stakeholder, I have to speak out openly. Chief Clark further stated that the Niger Delta leaders, led by me, have unfortunately failed to condemn these few corrupt members of the National Assembly who have converted and are still converting the NDDC into their personal farmyard. This is why there is always a scramble and manipulation to be chairman and members of this juicy committee. He noted that oil in the Niger Delta was deposited there by God Almighty, knowing the type of difficulty and swampy terrain the region was situated in. He said that, therefore, for the proceeds of these resources to be fraudulently taken by people who want to egocentrically enrich themselves is unacceptable and will be resisted. This has gone on for too long and has to stop. We will no longer tolerate this criminal exploitation of our resources. The elder statesman further lamented the blatant injustice that would be done to the Niger Delta region if the allegations leveled against the legislators are true. According to him, as elders and youths of the Niger Delta region, most of us fought for the establishment of the Niger Delta Development Commission, risking our life and all that is dear to us for these persons to blatantly rob the people of the Niger Delta. If these allegations against them are true, it's murderous. Those whose blood was shed fighting for the development of the region would be rolling in their grave.
If you look at it, if I do some analysis of it, you see that first, if you ask me, I would say because they have accused you, you are now trying to defend yourself. That is, the IMC is trying to defend themselves because they have been accused. 1, 2. That doesn't also mean that the IMC, that what the IMC is raising, the allegation they are raising should be thrown aside. Just as there is a probe, from the side of the National Assembly, so also there should be another probe on the side of the question that the IMC is raising. Now, because if you are truly concerned about transparency, you are truly concerned about the growth and development of the place, then every other person who is being alleged to have been involved, because this is in the public space, and so you can't say, you can't throw it, under the carpet. You can't push it under the carpet. It's already in the public space, and they are saying, look, these persons who are highly placed have been involved in what? This level of corruption. These people who are in office have been involved in this level of corruption. And so the option is that there should be an independent group, or possibly like the EFCC or ICPC, because all of them are public officers, investigating thoroughly into every allegation that has been made. Because 1, it is not for the health of the NDDC. And I'm asking that, look, a transparent process should be put in place to probe virtually everyone who is alleged, so that we can know that our money is not going into the very wrong hands, so that we can be sure that the NDDC can grow.
Chief Clerk, in its own way, must have expressed from his own wisdom, has expressed some fears, which is natural. But I just think that it's time for them to allow INC work. If he has any fears, the presidency will address his letter, and in that process will use the opportunity to address every fear. But if the INC is also not doing properly, it's also time for them to sit together and ensure that they put their acts together, because we must make NDDC work.
What we're saying is that whether they are doing investigation forensically or anything, it should go side by side with the allocation meant for NDDC, and development should be going on. That is what the NDDC was set up for.
The NDDC repositioning to perform better. The change agents are in place. The task has begun, reassessing priorities.
The Niger Delta region can develop at a different pace from the rest of Nigeria. We don't need to develop at the same rate.
We must do what is right. Whatever has been done wrong, we must correct it from here.
The president insists that every penny spent on any project in the Niger Delta must be well accounted for.
Identifying no-go areas.
Every program that's been on, I think, should be encouraged, whilst we tone down on all the programs that have been abused and has given the NDDC a bad name, especially emergency projects which were abused in a very, very bad way.
Setting the standards.
The Commission must prioritize some signature projects.
Not only projects, we also have to empower our people. Agriculture, if you check today in Niger Delta, we have left agriculture behind.
That we will, in the best interest of the people of the Niger Delta, continue to work collaboratively with the membership of the board of the NDDC in the best interest of all.
Let it be that at the end of whatever period we spend here, that we will be able to see that there's been a change in the Niger Delta.
The NDDC repositioning to perform better. The consensus of opinion, therefore, is that the forensic audit should start in earnest, while the IMC is left alone to do its job of overseeing the audit and also continuing the work of developing the Niger Delta. I'm sure these are not two things that are difficult to let happen. We'll be here every week to see if all that is happening as you follow us on NDDC Today. Thanks for watching.